Hi everyone, welcome to the next video, and in this video we are going to talk about encryption and cryptography and their types. Now any cybersecurity certification exam will have one section on cryptography or encryption for sure, or any cybersecurity framework that you use while working on the ground will talk about encryption in one way or the other. So in this chapter, we are going to talk about what is encryption, how does encryption work, what is cryptography, its objectives, usage, and its types, what is private key and public key cryptography, and what are the key differences between symmetric and asymmetric or private and public key cryptography. So let us first talk about encryption. So what is encryption? So let's say there are these two guys, Mike and Lily, and both want to communicate. Now the thing here is Mike wants to send a message to Lily but wants to make sure that this message is always secure. It is only delivered to Lily and nobody else can read it. Now suppose there is this bad guy sitting in between and he has the capability to sniff this network, which means he can barge into this network and read the data packets traveling from one place to another one. Now Mike and Lily, obviously they don't want this to happen, so what they decide is that look Mike, we'll share this secret code whenever we communicate and only two of us will know about it, and whenever we communicate we'll communicate on a separate channel, for example. So even if somebody is able to receive this message, he is not able to read it because he does not have the secret code. So let's assume they decide on a secret code saying that whatever text Mike will be sending to Lily, he will be adding +1 to it, and Lily will in terms reduce a number by 1 and she'll be able to read it. So let's say Mike wants to send a message called July, July. So what he will do is he'll add +1 to it. So J becomes K, U becomes V, L becomes M, and Y becomes Z. Now he sends this message to Lily, and Lily knows that whenever he receives a message from Mike, she's supposed to decrease the number of this letter by 1. So this message JULY is called as plain text message, and this encrypted message or encoded message is called as ciphertext. Now what Mike will do is he will send this message obviously, and Lily will just use her secret key and reduce the number. So let's say the message received is KVMZ, so she will reduce -1 by each character. So K will become J, V becomes U, M becomes L, and Z becomes Y. So she receives the message. Now what if this hacker here gets hold of this message? So even if he gets hold of this message, he will not be able to read it because he does not know the secret key. Because secret key is only known to Mike and Lily. So this is how the communication is protected by using encryption. So let's understand encryption. So what is encryption? So basically when you want to send a message and want to make sure that it remains confidential, it remains secret, you need to do to encode it, right? And to encode it, you use some algorithm or program called encryption algorithm. And this encryption algorithm uses a key, secret key, to encrypt the message. So input to this algorithm is a message, and output of this algorithm is an encrypted message. Now this message is referred as plain text or clear text message, and this encrypted message is called as ciphertext. So this encryption program or encryption algorithm, it is called as cipher. Now what this cipher or encryption algorithm does is it takes this message as input, applies a secret key on it, and produces an encrypted message or ciphertext. So this is the simplest form of encryption. Now what is cryptography? We know about encryption, let's learn about cryptography and how both are relevant to each other. So cryptography is basically a combination of two Greek words. Crypto is KRYPTO, which is to hide or to conceal something, and graphy is the method of writing basically. So methods by which a message is written in a secret way or encoded way. This method is called as cryptography. Now, what are the objectives of cryptography? Why do we need cryptography? Obviously, we need it to protect the secrecy of information, confidentiality, which is integrity of information, access control on who gets the information and who doesn't, and obviously digital signature. And what are different usage of cryptography? So it is used in protecting information, it is used in securing the communication, access control, and securing the cloud storage, authentication, and cryptocurrencies. Now, cryptography, we can divide it into two parts. One is public key cryptography, another one is private key cryptography. So this public key cryptography is also known as asymmetric key cryptography, and this private key cryptography is also known as symmetric key cryptography. Some of the examples of asymmetric or public key cryptography is RSA, ECC, etc. And similarly, private or symmetric key, it is also called as shared key cryptography. Some of the example is like DES algorithm. Now, if we talk about cryptography, basically it's a combination of two sub processes. One is encryption, another is decryption. Encryption is also referred as encoding and decryption as decoding. So, for example, when you have some plain text and you input it into the cipher, or the encryption algorithm, the output of this algorithm is an encrypted message or a ciphertext, which is an encoded message, right? And you can only read this message if you have the right key. Now, how do you decrypt or how do you read this ciphertext or encoded or encrypted message? So what you do is you use this ciphertext and input it into a decryption algorithm, and this will give you a plain text as an output. So in very simple terms, this is how encryption and decryption work. Now, the very important element in cryptography is the encryption keys. So this encryption algorithm uses a key to encrypt the message into a ciphertext, and this decryption algorithm uses this key to decrypt the cipher message into the plain text. Now, let's first understand private key cryptography or symmetric key cryptography. We also call it as shared secret key or shared secret cryptography. So let's say again there are two people who wants to communicate. This is the sender and this is the receiver. Let's say he wants to send a message to the receiver, right? So he will use this encryption algorithm. He'll input the plain text, the clear text message which he wants to communicate to the sender, and he will input this into this encryption algorithm. This encryption algorithm will use a key and generate a ciphertext, right, as we studied in the previous slide. Now this ciphertext will be sent over to this receiver. This receiver will decrypt that ciphertext. So this ciphertext which is delivered here will be inputted into one decryption algorithm which will use a secret key or shared secret key and generate a plain text at receiver's end. So basically it's the same example which we discussed in the previous slides, right? So they know this, there is this common shared secret key or shared password, and if he wants to encrypt some message here, he will have to use this shared key as an input, and if she or the receiver wants to receive and decrypt this message, she will have to use this shared key to decrypt the message. And because this is a shared key which is known to both sender and receiver and it is private to both, it is called as private key encryption or symmetric key encryption. Now let's deep dive into a little complex part of it, which is public key cryptography or asymmetric cryptography. Now what happens in a public key cryptography is, in the previous lesson we saw that as part of private key cryptography there is a shared key or shared secret which is known to both sender and receiver. But unlike this shared key, as part of public key or asymmetric key cryptography, both the sender and the receiver has two keys. So the sender will have a private key and a public key, and the receiver will have a private key and public key. And private keys will only be known to these people. They will not share private key with each other. But their public keys will be public, which means let's say this guy here has a public key as XYZ. So this XYZ will be known to anyone in the world, right? But his private key is like a password, so only he knows about it. Similarly, receiver has a public key, let's say ABC, which everybody in the world knows, but she also has a private key like a password, which only she knows. Now, how does this public key cryptography works? So let's say this guy here wants to send a message to this guy here. Uses for encrypting this plain text is receiver's public key, this receiver, and his public key is this ABC, right? This one. So he uses ABC to encrypt this message and generate this ciphertext. Now this guy sends this ciphertext to the receiver. Now once this ciphertext or encrypted text has been received at receiver's end, what she needs to do is use her own private key, right? Because she knows her private key, basically her password in a way, right? So because the private key is only known to this guy, so she will just use the private key and decrypt the message. So this is how public key cryptography works. This guy here, he uses her public key, right? Encrypts the message, sends it over. This person here receives the ciphertext or encrypted text, but uses her own private key to decrypt it. So this is how, in a nutshell, public key cryptography works. And to further elaborate it, let's say there is this sender wants to send this plain text message to this guy here, but before he does that, he wants to encrypt it. So this sender here uses public keys of this person, right, and encrypt the message because this public key is known to everyone. So he encrypts this message and sends it over. Now this guy here receives this encrypted text and uses her own private key to decrypt it, like her own password, and she will have the message. On the other hand, if let's say this guy here wants to send the message to this guy, so this becomes the sender and this guy becomes the receiver, right? So what she will do is she will use public keys because this guy's public key is known to everyone. So she will capture this public key and use this public key to encrypt the message and generate this ciphertext or encrypted text. Now she will send it over to this person here. Now here is the ciphertext with this guy. What he will do is he will use his private keys because this is a kind of password for him. Only he knows about his private key. He will input this private key into this algorithm and generate the plain text message. So in a nutshell, this is how public key cryptography works. So there are few key differences between private and public key which you must know. From your exam perspective, let's say you are appearing for any cybersecurity exam, it will always have private and public key cryptography in form of questions. So let's talk about private and public key cryptography and their differences. So when we talk about number of keys, private key always uses one single shared key, as we discussed in the previous slides. On the other hand, public key cryptography, it will use private and public keys. So private keys will only be known to people as they know their password, and their public key will be known to everyone. If we talk about speed, obviously private key cryptography is very fast because there are very less computations needed. On the other hand, public cryptography involves a lot of computations, and that's why it's little slower in comparison to private keys, private key cryptography. Now, if we talk about key distribution, this requires secure exchange of keys between two parties, as we saw in the example. In terms of public key cryptography, it is openly distributed, especially the public key. Private key, obviously, it is a secret with the individual. Now, complexity, obviously, it is less complex. It is more complex because a lot of people are involved here. Non-repudiation. So private key cryptography does not provide non-repudiation. What does it mean? So non-repudiation means if somebody has performed some action, he must not be able to deny that he has not done it. So for example, if a thief is caught stealing something and he says in the court that I haven't done this, then there could be some CCTV footage that can be produced as evidence, and in that case, if the thief has been caught in that CCTV footage, he cannot deny that it was not him. So that's what we call as non-repudiation. So in private key cryptography, you don't have non-repudiation because there is one shared key. So anybody can encrypt or decrypt message, and you will never know who has done it between sender and receiver because they both share the same secret key. But in terms of public key cryptography, it does provide non-repudiation. Confidentiality and authentication. Yes, it provides confidentiality because there is a shared secret key, but this public key cryptography provides both confidentiality and authentication. Risk, obviously, risk is high as part of private key cryptography because if the shared key is disclosed, the communication between parties will be disclosed. So that's where risks are high. But in terms of public key cryptography, the risk is low because let's say there are 10 people sending communication to each other, and the private key of one person is compromised, the other 9 will not be impacted. So that's the key difference between private and public key cryptography. I hope you understand it. Thank you so much for watching, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll be more than happy to answer any of the queries you may have. Thank you.